welcome back to Film Bites. I'm Andy, the dad.
And I'm Jack, the lad.
This time we're looking at a thriller called Dark Asset. What do you think, Jack?
Well, Dark Asset. Let's just start with that, shall we? The name Dark Asset. Was the Dark Asset supposed to be the main character, John Doe? Was it supposed to be this mysterious character that he meets in the bar?
It's a good question, and we spent an awful lot of this film wrestling with just what the bloody hell was going on.
To put it bluntly, yes. I mean, it almost feels like when you've got a dog, you throw a tennis ball, you just go looking at it and they dart off. They keep darting off in different directions until they get the ball itself, because that's what the plot was. It was very much throwing you a bone, going off to find what's going on, and then you all of a sudden go, wait, what? Why am I here now? Hang on, why am I over here now? Why have I got this? I've got the plot now, but oh, wait, no. It's God again. Bit of a weird analogy, but it's kind of the way it felt. It just darted around the place.
Yeah, I think it's probably more to do with the fact that it was a strange way of telling the story. We were dotting back and forth. We had little sidebars, then we had little bits of action. And the action wasn't the worst action I've ever seen, and the acting wasn't the worst acting I've ever seen.
It had very much a Tom Cruise vibe about it, I will say, with the main character.
I think it is a film that really struggles with its own identity. What does it want to be? The sci-fi budget itself, I think, it wasn't sci-fi enough to call it science fiction.
I think the only science fiction part you can really talk about is Chips, a room that's completely CGI apart from your actors. Holograms?
Kind of, yeah.
I mean, I think that's probably why they're calling it sci-fi, but even then, I've seen movies that are spy/thriller that have those elements and they don't list themselves as sci-fi particularly.
Yeah, there's some really strange choices with the film. The music at the very beginning, we seem to have this very unusual introduction sequence,
which
it had
probably could have been cut.
Yeah, I mean, it had 80s vibes to it.
I got RoboCop vibes.
But it was all very contrived and it didn't really feel like it knew where it was going to go.
It didn't really go anywhere particularly. It almost felt like a lot of ideas, mashed them together, see where it goes. Yeah. And because of that, you had characters that could potentially be really interesting, not really leading up to anything. A lot of padding, particularly with characters outside of the main story, that link to the main story. But then you kind of think, well, why didn't you just do that in the first place? Why didn't we go in that order and not jump around the place and confuse the viewer?
Yeah, and I think that part of that problem might be down to the fact that the writer is also the director. So the writer knows exactly where he's going to go with it. But at times that didn't translate to what we were getting on screen.
I feel like there were a lot of things that did translate well, particularly the action set pieces were fine. They were really well done.
Watchable.
John Doe kind of gave me a Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 2 vibes, which I didn't mind. It was cheesy, but it was fun and it could have worked. When it happens a bit, at points it did feel a bit forced.
Yes.
Because that was happening too much, I thought. I think the editing was fine. There were some good sequences of editing and others that just felt like, oh, okay, we're here now.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, a bit of I wouldn't say downbeat ending, but the ending's just a bit like, oh, okay then.
Yeah. I kind of agree with everything that you've just said, to be perfectly honest with you. It was like the set pieces were good, but the backgrounds and everything, there wasn't anything particularly visually interesting going on behind what was going off the fighting. So you had very austere scenery.
Yeah.
You had very limited areas in which the film took you. It was deliberately, I think, probably that way. Maybe due to constraints of budget. I mean, the car that they use in this is probably the most expensive asset in the whole thing.
As well as the CGI rooms, I imagine. But my question would be, why?
Yeah, it didn't really gel. It wasn't a horrible film or anything like that. It was entirely watchable.
It's a popcorn eater.
Yeah.
But it's not one that I'd watch more than once.
You get to the end of this film and it's pretty forgettable because it doesn't really have anything to draw you in. You don't want a sequel to this because there's nothing there particularly. It almost feels like an 80s TV show brought back for one last outing. And we live now in a time where we've got the Quantum Leap reboot, and that does this kind of thing much, much better. It tells a better story, and it's a more linear story. It doesn't rely on tricks to get you from one part to another. I think that's what probably let this film down, that it didn't settle down. You couldn't really engage with the actors, even though they weren't doing anything particularly poor or anything like that.
They were following directions.
But it was just because there wasn't enough meat on the bone to to really dive into the actual characters. You just feel meh at the end of this film.
That's the unfortunate part, yeah.
So it's a film that's definitely worth renting if you're at a loose end, but it is not going to be the most diverting movie that you've ever seen.
And if you're wanting something that will keep you engaged throughout, let's say, the 1 hour and 30 minutes, I'll be honest, I struggled at points.
Yes.
Because it was very much talk, show, and then, well, why did you show me that? And then when there were particular occasions where they do reveal why they showed something, you could have been doing that with the whole scene added together, and it would have removed a lot of the time constraints. Plus, it probably would have made it a bit more exciting. But because I think there was too many pauses between these flashbacks and they weren't really doing anything because there were characters we didn't grow to care about, it was just fly on the wall. I was spectating it, but I wasn't really feeling anything.
Yeah.
Which is such a shame because there could have been some really good moments in this.
Agreed. So, Dark Asset, is it a crime or is it a classic? It's not a crime, but it's certainly no classic.
It's, we can't really pinpoint if it's one or the other. I'd probably say if we had to lean into one, which is such a difficult notion in itself, it's a classic in the sense of if you want a popcorn eater, there you go. It's something to pass the time. It's something you can watch and have some kind of amusement with if that's your kind of thing. If you're expecting proper plot lines, something that's quite strong, I would say it's a crime.
If you've enjoyed our podcast, please consider liking and subscribing for future episodes. Smash the like notification bell if you're on YouTube. Your support means the world to us. Please help us spread the word to grow the podcast. Until we meet again, film biters, we'll be watching. Will you?